Now, for anyone who is interested or knows someone who might be interested in listening to this meeting in Spanish, please feel free to click on the interpretation button at the bottom of the screen and select Spanish. I will now take a moment to offer a brief welcome along with these instructions in Spanish. Buenas noches y gracias por estar con nosotros en el equipo de trabajo de MetroCenter y el Aeropuerto de Austin. Si usted está participando en español, es posible que actualmente ya está escuchando la interpretación en vivo. Pero si no es así y desea escuchar a esta reunión en español, solo hay que buscar el botón Interpretación en la parte inferior de la pantalla. Oprime el botón y seleccione la opción de español. Más adelante en el programa tendremos la oportunidad de aportar comentarios en vivo. Si desea participar en español, los intérpretes estarán para apoyarle. Quedamos a la orden. Y con su permiso, continuaremos con la reunión en inglés con interpretación al español. Thank you. Let's transition to our slideshow for tonight. So as I said, welcome to the Project Connect MetroCenter and Airport Working Group. Tonight, we're going to share information about Project Connect and the Blue Line, and then walk through the current proposed design of the Blue Line, beginning at the Austin Airport and working our way towards Faro Station. As part of the walkthrough, we will provide an update about the MetroCenter station and the Park and Ride facility, which will be located along East Riverside Drive near Yellow Jacket Lane. Slide, please. We want this to be an interactive discussion. So as we walk through the project, you can pose questions in the Q&A section, which you'll also find at the bottom of the screen for our team. And we'll either send a written answer to you through that Q&A section, or we'll discuss it live. Later in the program, we'll allow folks to raise their hands and open up mics so we can hear your questions in a live format. It's very reminiscent of what we used to do for live radio shows. Slide 4, please. Please allow me a moment to emphasize the following. Our outreach and engagement with the community has been intentionally inclusive. We want to hear from all of our voices in the community. If you spot a person, maybe a friend or a neighbor that you're encouraged to participate for the first time tonight, please encourage new voices to be heard in this space. This is a safe space where every idea deserves to be considered and every question deserves to be answered. And that said, we will try to get to all of your questions tonight. But if we can't, know that we will use the issues that you have raised to inform topics for our future meetings. Our aim is to have you back to your evening plans, or in my case, it's kids' bedtime routine by 7 p.m. So without further ado, I'd like to introduce my colleagues that are on the project. As I state their name, they will turn on their camera and they'll smile and wave. So first we've got Lindsay Wood, who was our Deputy Project Manager for the Blue Line with HNTV. And then we have Josh Meath from the engineering team with HNTV. And we have Arnab Gupta, who is our with Austin Transit Partnership as a Director of Design for the Blue Line. And last but certainly not least, we have Lonnie Stern, who is our Manager in Community Business Partnerships for the Austin Transit Partnerships. Thank you all for being here. So our next section gives a little bit of background for anyone who might be joining us for the first time. And we asked the question, what is Project Connect? Well, slide please. It's no secret that Austin is the place to be. The population in the greater Austin area is expected to double from 2 million that it is, we're just over 2 million today, to 4 million in 2040. Slide, please. In 2019, the City Council approved the Austin Strategic Mobility Plan, which aims to keep the number of cars constant while growing our population by an additional 2 million people. You'll see that as we go through these designs, this is where the policy rubber meets the road. We are designing a variety of modes to make it easier to get through our city for everyone. Slide, please. So Project Connect expands transit throughout the Austin area. with increased services across the city, including a new light rail system, a downtown light rail tunnel, and that's supposed to make everyone's trip faster, whether you're underground or over it. An expanded bus system with Metro Rapid, Metro Express, and pickup zones. And we're also transitioning to a zero emissions fleet. Slide, please. So what do we mean when we talk about expanding transit? Do we expect that 100% of the people will ride our buses and trains 100% of the time? No. But every time we take a car, especially a single rider car, off of the road, everyone benefits. Take a look at the little orange and yellow section of this moving image. Here you can see a lot more cars on the roadway, limited bus, and no dedicated transit lanes. Here we're only able to move 126 people through the roadway during each light cycle, assuming that 80 of them are riding transit. On the right, with the blue-green side, we have fewer cars, a couple more buses, and a lane that is dedicated to transit. In the same light cycle, we can move 235 people through this light cycle, with 204 of them in transit. That is more than 100 people getting through the intersection in the same light cycle. If you've ever sat behind anyone trying to get through light cycles and dreading that yellow-orange light, imagine 100 more of us being able to more effectively move through these light cycles. What we like about Project Connect is that it reflects our community's values. We have opportunity and equity. Project Connect has already created thousands of good local jobs and will continue to do so. And it will provide more access to healthcare, education, employment, essential services, entertainment, and will also create and maintain more affordable places to live. Our second values are environmental and sustainability. There's a shared passion for our community for the environment, and that's why our commitment to environmental and sustainable practices are core to Project Connect. We are already working towards our zero emission fleet and will continue to lean into the challenge to conserve and protect natural resources in the decisions we make. And then finally, we have innovation and technology. Technology and innovation inspire much of who we are as a region here in Austin. Project Connect will embrace that spirit, making transportation smarter, more efficient, enjoyable, and easier to use. And speaking of innovation, this project gives us an opportunity to reimagine the public realm. Here we have an artist rendering as an example of what transit could look like when the light rail system coexists with cars, bikes, and pedestrians. It is an opportunity for us to bring local voices to the design table, like you're doing tonight, to improve accessibility for everyone while incorporating what makes us Austin, with public art for the average customer to appreciate daily, and for the visitors to get a sense of who we are in Austin and how we work to keep it weird while we keep it moving. And finally, you may be asking yourself, where are we in the process? We've completed 15% design so far, and here are our key milestones. And we have entered into the project development phase for the Federal Transit Administration. In the summer of 2022, we will have a draft of the environmental impact statement and our proposed 30% design. As my colleague Lonnie likes to say, we're baking it in clay. So the clay is not quite baked yet. By winter of 2022, 2023, we aim to have our final environmental impact statement with a record of decision from the Federal Transit Administration. So with that, I'd like to turn things over to the woman behind the magic, our Deputy Project Manager for the Blue Line, Ms. Lindsay Wood.
Thank you, Jocelyn. I'll start with a high-level overview of the Blue Line project, just to set the context for the conversation as we dive in here today. The Blue Line runs from downtown, from Republic Square to the airport, has a dedicated transit way, shares much of Metrobus Route 20, includes 10 planned stations, of which 2 are underground, 7 are at grade or at street level, and 1 is elevated at the airport. And the service is planned to run every 10 to 15 minutes. As part of the Blue Line, we have identified this area that we're going to be talking about today, covering the East Riverside Working Group study area from Faro Stations, Metropolis, the MetroCenter station, and to the airport. And we'll be talking about the park and ride location that has been identified in this portion of the corridor, and update everyone with the location of the station and the park and ride that was not identified at the 15% level, but has since been evaluated, and want to discuss those updates. I'll note that these plans that we'll talk about today for the MetroCenter station, as well as the park and ride, and really the light rail as a whole, serve as the anchor for the East Riverside Corridor Master Plan, and are very consistent with the East Riverside Corridor Plan that included transit and a station in this area for the MetroCenter. So we're going to dive in shortly. I mentioned that we'll cover the area. We're going to start at the airport and work our way west and talk about that end of line station, then how we get to the MetroCenter station and the proposed park and ride, as well as cover the areas just to the west for the Metropolis and Faro stations. Before we dive into the actual engineering drawings, I want to give a little bit of a guide into what you're about to see. You will see, we're going to walk through the design files themselves. Remember that these are live design files. They are draft, work in progress. You're getting a preview before we've actually even submitted the draft 30% designs that Jocelyn talked about in the program schedule just a bit ago. So these are, they're really live action and are seeking your input and feedback as we progress the designs. So what you'll see are the aerial backgrounds, and then in orange are the bicycle and pedestrian elements. So sidewalks, bikeways, in some cases it's a shared use path. You'll see the traffic lanes, which are outlined in blue, the right of way, which is a dark blue. The green indicate curbs, and that may be in the case of what you see in the image here to your left, that's the curb along the transit way, as well as the curb, the outside curb along the roadway. And then in the middle of the street, center running through here, you'll see the actual light rail tracks, with eastbound or toward the airport being in blue, and westbound or toward downtown being in red. And as I said, these are truly live action, in progress designs. There's much work to be done. We have a long ways to go to get between now and when this gets built, and this is the perfect time for community input and feedback, and we really look forward to having a conversation about these concepts.
I'm getting excited, Lindsay. You know, when you get to this slide, you know, it looks like that's it, folks. Thanks so much. But actually, no, we're going to take you in for a deep dive today. And we want to make sure that you have an opportunity to participate. So you might follow the lead of your friend and neighbor, Ron Thrower, who's already raised his hand, getting ready to ask a question. And we do have the chat closed. We have the Q&A open, so that way we can archive all of your questions and possibly answer some of them live, but we may even bring them up on screen as well. So if, as you're watching, you have a question, either raise your hand or click on the Q&A at the bottom, and we'll try to answer it either live or by calling on you in a little bit. All right, so Lindsay, are we going to transition to seeing this live file? This is my favorite.
We are. Josh, if you can pull that up, I will start walking everybody through the design concepts. Thanks, Josh. And if you can.
All right, so it looks like we're looking at a space capsule. Where are we?
We are at the airport. So our design begins with our connection to the airport. And okay. Here, what you see in the middle, that kind of hatched rectangle, or the one with the stripes on it, that is the station platform. And the context of that and how that really fits into here and what you will experience as a customer is that this platform is elevated about 30 feet high in the air. And the reason for that is to connect directly to the planned future pedestrian connection into the terminal expansion that the airport is planning. So you would be able to get off the train, you walk to the end of the platform there that is between the two existing parking garages, with on your left, that's the blue garage, on your right, the Conrack or the rental car facility garage. And when you would walk straight due south going into the terminal.
And I guess I've seen some people there like taking that final staircase up to catch an Uber or a Lyft. So you know that space between those garages as well.
Yes, and there will be what we call vertical circulation elements at the station. So that means how do you get from ground level to the platform or vice versa? There will be elevators, stairs, and escalators to make those transfers as easy as possible. So we start here at the end of line, and then we move to the north, staying on that roughly 30-foot high bridge throughout this area. And Josh, maybe pause here for just a moment.
Yeah, actually, I was going to ask you a question here, Lindsay, as well. Is there an easy way to tell when we're in the air versus on the ground?
Yeah, Josh, can you zoom in a little bit? So what you'll start to see through here, see those blue rectangles? Those are bridge supports. That's each of our piers, or we call them vents, that are the bridge supports. So where you see that along the alignment, and also where we're sort of outlined in orange, that kind of overlaps where those white numbers are. That is the footprint of our bridge, or the outer edge of our bridge. Later on, when we come back down to ground, you'll see that orange color become green. And that's how you can sort of distinguish between where we're in the air, if you have these bridge supports and you see that orange boundary, versus where we're on the ground, it'll be green and you won't have the bridge supports.
All right, I'll keep asking just because, I've got color blindness, so we'll see how it goes.
All right.
Let's keep trucking.
So through here, we come in between the surface parking lots, stay on that elevated bridge structure, and move toward SH71. We cross over Presidential, over some planned development along the airport property, and staying elevated really to minimize the impact of the project through here. There's a slight gap in the aerials here. We'll move back out of it in a second. And then we turn to go west at Spirit of Texas and cross over that. So no interaction of cars and trains here. We're still on a bridge well into the air. And Josh, maybe pause here for a second. What you see on the north side of our alignment in that shaded light blue color is not part of the blue line, but we are coordinating very closely with TxDOT's planned expansion of the SH71 frontage road. So here you can see we're kind of running right alongside it, elevated on a bridge beside them. And then as you go a little further west, we actually run on top of them and overlap the frontage road project below.
Oh, wow.
Through here. So here, where you see those bridge supports again, those are called straddle vents because we're straddling over the roadway structure below.
And I'm assuming we've worked with TxDOT on this and they're on board with it as well.
Yes, we are coordinating very closely with TxDOT, not only for integrating the blue line plans with their frontage road plans, but also multiple utility relocations that are planned as part of TxDOT's project and that we need to make sure we're accommodating in the blue line project.
We'll still be up in the air at this point, correct?
That's right.
I can wave to everybody who is waiting for the shuttle at the parking spot at this location. Okay, great.
And here we're at the parking spot, since you mentioned that. And I also want to highlight what you see as those sort of curving alignments on the south side of our light rail here. On the right, that Josh is showing where it's still blue, that is a shared use path planned by TxDOT as part of their 71 frontage road extension. Where you see that turn to orange is a possible shared use path that could be built in conjunction with the blue line to help bridge the gap between TxDOT's shared use path and when we get over to East Riverside in a minute, where we connect with the at street level bike and pedestrian improvements that run the full length of the Blue Line corridor. So this would sort of fill that gap in between those 2 points of 183 and the parking spot that you see here.
Okay, so I heard that we're talking about a possible extension of that bike and pedestrian shared use path. So certainly if there are people in the audience who have strong feelings about it, you should let us know in the Q&A. Can you keep going, or are we going to take that across 183?
We are, but before we get there, our light, and I mentioned that was at ground level. Our light rail is still elevated through here. And before we get to 183, right about here, so you see the orange line end, and you have that little red notched line. And Josh, maybe zoom in there just for a minute. That's a retaining wall. That is the transition to come down from an elevated bridge structure to get down to the ground level, where you then switch to where you see the green line. And now our transit way is at grade or at ground level. The reason we do that is because if you can zoom out, you're going to see these big blue triangles, well, wedges through here. Those are the runway protection zones for the airport, which is a federally mandated space that we need to not be elevated in. And also there are some very large and very high overhead electric Austin energy transmission lines that we need to not have a conflict with. So we come down and go under those and stay at ground level through that runway protection zone. We come around, make that corner. So now on your left, you're seeing 183. And then we maybe zoom back out just a little bit. We come back up. So you see that red notched line again. That's our retaining wall to transition back onto a bridge.
And it looks like you're taking that
183
shared use path with you.
That's right.
Great.
Yes. So creating a possible connection for that bike and ped, really a safe movement to bridge the gap between 183 and that parking spot location I showed for TxDOT's shared use path. So then we come over 183 to the west. And now where the roadway you see here is East Riverside Drive. And through here, we wanted to stay elevated for a little ways beyond 183 for two reasons. One is maintaining access to the neighborhood. You see Palma Verde right there, making sure that we're not coming down, say on a retaining wall and blocking access to that street where you wouldn't be able to turn across from East Riverside to Palma Verde if we were blocking that with the big wall in the middle of the roadway. And also to maintain access to the church driveway that you see just on the top of the screen there. So this allows us to maintain full accessibility to these areas. And then immediately on the other side of Palma Verde, we come down off of our bridge. We're center running, so we're in the middle of the roadway, meaning the eastbound lanes of Riverside are on one side of the transit way and the westbound are on the other. Yes.
Before you keep going there, I'm starting to see some new shapes and colors there. So, I mean, some of it is obvious. Like I see that there's the crosswalk that's in, to me, it looks like a light blue. And then it looks like those blue boxes, those are bus stops, right?
They are, yes.
And then with the new, okay, so with the bike lanes going around the bus stop on the outer end.
Right.
So new standard there. And a signalized intersection. I also saw that you still maintain the vehicular access to 183 on this street.
Yes, East Riverside continues sort of below our transit way to connect, as it does today, to 183.
Okay. All right, let's keep on trucking. I know that we had some questions in the Q&A, and I think we've got a team who are responding to some of them. They were asking about what would the max speed, do we know the max speed of the trains in the section from MetroCenter to the terminal?
From MetroCenter to the terminal. So where we're street running, we're generally at a design speed of 35. And where we're grade separated, meaning where we're not sharing the street or we're not at street level, then we have a higher design speed of 55 or up.
And there was one other question that was talking about the master plan for the airport, realigning 71 a little further north. Is that going to impact our projects in the long run? Because right now we're directly next to the existing right-of-way.
It's on the other side of 71 from where our proposed blue line alignment is that I just showed everyone. But there are some considerations for potential maintenance facilities in that area. And so those plans are being considered as part of finding a place for a maintenance facility that hasn't been found yet.
Great. And then I see. And then in addition, just because you've got the screen stopped right in this place, what's that little blue line that's coming out into the parking lot there?
Yes, so that is, you'll see along the line, there's some areas that kind of jog out for proposed right-of-way that deviate from the main corridor. This one is for a traction power substation. So that is a required systems element to operate the light rail and essentially generates the power that then gets distributed to the trains via the overhead contact system, which is the technical term for the wires that run above the trains and distribute that electrical power to the actual light rail vehicles. So that is a footprint. Those are generally a preliminary footprint for a traction power substation. They're generally spaced roughly about a mile apart along the full corridor, and you might see some of those as we go. You'll also see, Josh, maybe go just a little to your left or west. There are some different shapes that aren't quite as rectangular that you'll notice, and this is an example of a water quality pond. So in order to meet the design criteria for the program and protect the water quality of the region, there are various biofiltration ponds also located along the corridor.
Great, great.
And I mentioned the signalized intersection at Palma Verde. You see one here at Hope, but I want to also note that anywhere you don't have a signalized intersection would not have turns permitted across the transit way. So some of these driveways, like you see through here, they become right in, right out, because it is not safe to make a left turn across the transit way without that protected movement and protected lane to make that left turn that will only be at signalized intersections.
So I suspect when we move a little further west, we'll get some more pointed questions about that. And again, I would encourage people who are watching to put your questions in the Q&A or raise your hand and we can call on you, and it'll be just like a call-in radio show tonight. Let's keep going.
All right, we'll keep approaching the west here. So here we're at Hope. Again, we're street level, center running all through this area. We come up on the MetroCenter intersection. You see those water quality ponds coming on both sides there again. MetroCenter being signalized.
All right, now we're getting to Ben White. So we're crossing over here. I know there's been questions before. Do we need to rebuild this bridge or can we work with the existing bridge?
So this bridge was actually designed and built to accommodate light rail. It was planned and coordinated with TxDOT years ago to accommodate a potential light rail line through here. So yay TxDOT, yay us, yay city for thinking through that well in advance of this project ever existing. And there is a thicker bridge deck in the middle of that existing bridge that can accommodate coming back in and embedding light rail in the transit way through the middle of that. Now, however, putting the transit way in the middle of that, we still need to maintain the existing capacity of that bridge. So what that means is by putting the rail in the middle, we actually need to widen the bridge out on both sides so that we can maintain the existing roadway lane capacity on the outside of the transit way and also add new bike ped connectivity across with shared use paths shown here in orange on both sides.
Cool. That is really great. It's pretty uncomfortable to cross highways, so it's nice to know there'll be an improvement there too. Thanks.
All right, so now we come up onto the MetroCenter station area here west, or I guess depending on your perspective, north of 71. This one's a weird angle. It's always hard for me to pick a direction there. And we approach the station here at Coriander. So you'll see that platform in the middle. It's a center platform, street level. The platforms are raised a little bit above the top of rail, which the rails are flush with the roadway, and the platform's a little over a foot higher. And the reason for that is to have fully level boarding so that when you step off the train, you're stepping off onto a flush surface with the boarding level of the train. And so since that is a little bit higher than where the wheel of the train hits the rail, that means that we have ramps approaching that platform level. And that's what you see there in orange. So you come into the middle, the median area for the station via crosswalks that you see in that light blue, and then ramp up to that platform level where you see in orange.
And so that's a new pedestrian hybrid beacon there, in addition to the signalized intersection on Coriander, so far as what I'm reading here.
That is exactly right. So we want double-ended access, which means that you can access both ends of the stations at the platform. In most cases, we have a signalized intersection that allows for that access, but where we don't, like you see on the left side here or the west end of the platform, we have pedestrian hybrid beacon or PHB crossings that provide that protected pedestrian movement to access that end of the platform.
Okay.
And I'm going to jump from this is also where our proposed at the draft 30% level park and ride side is, which is that gray box below. But before
Okay.
go into that, I'm going to switch to the slides and talk a little bit about why the station is here.
Wait, before you go to the slide, hold on a sec, just to make sure. So I see Yellow Jacket there. Where's Annie's Day and Night on this map? Just to give people context.
Just to the left of Yellow Jacket or
Okay,
west.
so where that little parking lot where those cars are and stuff, or a little further, right over there.
Yeah, right through there. Yeah.
Okay. All right. So now we got a plate. We got a landmark to work with here. All right. Let's make the hop.
All right. So I'm going to go back to my screen for a moment.
So again, I know that there's a bunch of Q&A coming in. And again, I'm happy to put you on, you won't have to be on screen. I see Andrew Pyle has his hand up. Can we take some questions from the audience before we slide over to the site selection for that park and ride?
Sure.
Yeah, let's see. Andrew, I've allowed you to talk. All you have to do is unmute and ask your question live.
Hi, y'all kind of answered this before, but I had to deal with the little minor emergency with my cat. Can y'all please explain y'all's bicycle plan again in regards to the MetroCenter station?
Yes. So actually, Josh, can you do me a favor and go back to your screen?
Like that, reverse it.
It'll help to illustrate. So I'm going to speak in general terms first, and then I'll answer your question specifically at the station. In general terms, we have bicycle and pedestrian elements along the full length of the blue line project corridor. So you'll see either sidewalks, bike lanes, or shared use paths for the full length, so that we're really providing that safe and efficient and accessible connection to the light rail system, but also really just throughout the whole area. So here at the station, you see it on both sides. So on the south side or along the eastbound lanes of Riverside, it connects just running parallel to the roadway. It's behind the curb of the roadway. So above, think of it as the curb is a step up from the roadway. And then you have on the north side, the separate bicycle and pedestrian facilities. So the south side where it's one path, that's a shared use path. On the north side, they're separated, where you have a sidewalk and then a bike lane. And the space in between can be a place for planting street trees and creating shade.
Thanks for that. And I know further up the line, Andrew, there's a discussion then again about trying to go up and over 183, because we know that as a bicyclist, it's pretty uncomfortable to try to cross that street. So there's a potential for making that connection with this project. Let's see, I'm also going to go to a question that was in the chat. Ron Thrower was asking, why name it Metro Center when it's not near Metro Center? And I think I want to kind of take that one, Lindsay, and say, the names on the map are for planning purposes. The name that we ultimately select here will come from people like you. So if you live in the neighborhood and you have ideas for what we could be naming a park and ride or a station in this area, we'd like to hear those, because we'd much rather name it something that's meaningful for the community than something that is referencing a business park on the other side of the highway. That's for sure. Well, I am sorry to mess with your slideshow, but it sounds like, Josh, you could probably switch back over for Lindsay, and then we'll open it up to questions again as we go from there. So again, remember, you can use the bottom of your screen to click raise hand, or it may be in your more menu. And otherwise, I'll keep monitoring the Q&A for things to bring into the room.
All right. And what I'm about to talk about might also help answer that last question on why it's called the Metro Center Station, because we started with some different options for where that station would be. And one of those was right at the intersection with Metro Center. So we'll talk a little bit about how we got from there to here. All right, so the principles behind how we locate where the stations are start with looking at spacing along the light rail line. So we generally try to have them about a half mile to maximum mile spacing, so that they're very accessible and that you can, from any point you're at, easily walk to a station in one direction or the other. And then we also look at origins and destinations and use of the area. We don't want to put a station in an area that there's nobody there to use it, or there's nowhere to go in that area. So we look at high activity corridor destinations and origins. And then we have to work within the design criteria of the light rail system. So light rail vehicles are very particular about where they can go and how they can move. And we need a certain amount of tangent or straight track for them to stop at the station, for the platform itself that can't be on a curve. We also need enough straight area for them to have sort of a buffer before and after the station to meet that criteria. So all of those things combined in this area led to what were in the 15% as two different options for station locations. Site 1 was actually at Metro Center and was the reason that it was named that for the time being for a planning purpose, as Lonnie mentioned. And then just to not confuse people and give a new name, we're keeping that name as we look at this new, Site 2, but now the proposed location for the Metro Center station. So I'll talk a little bit about why Site 2 versus Site 1. And I'll also note that this station, the Metro Center station, has been identified for a proposed park and ride because it's the farthest east or closest to the end of line station that does not require entrance onto the airport property. So we want to—
I can tell you, Lindsay, we get lots of questions when I was at Cap Metro just asking, where's the park and ride on Riverside? And now we might actually get to have an answer for that question.
Yes, we don't expect that everybody is going to live, work, or want to go somewhere that's right along the blue line. And we want to make the line accessible for those that maybe are a little further off the corridor to come in, park, and ride the train to wherever they may be going. Or even connect to the orange line downtown and go even further across town, or ride the red line, or connect to any of the Metro Rapid routes that the blue line connects with and crosses.
Okay, so we were looking for a place north of Benway or west of Benway. If you're in San Antonio, you probably think we don't know cardinal directions here in Austin. So did you select that specific spot, or it looks like there's lots of room in that area that is potentially available?
Yes, so I'm going to walk through Site 1 and then Site 2, which is the proposed concept for the 30% design at this stage. But I want to note, I mentioned spacing was a key criteria earlier, so I want to just compare these for a second first. Station 1 would be, or site 1 would be roughly about a mile from the next station at Montopolis, which is really at the far end of that kind of spacing limit. And then Station 2 is just a little over half a mile from the Montopolis station. So going into that first option that was shown as a possibility in the 15% design, but as design progressed, we came across some challenges with this location. One is that to actually have the minimum length of straight track needed for the platform here, it would have blocked the MetroCenter intersection itself while being center running. And that would have meant someone coming from, let's say, 183 and going westbound along Riverside wouldn't have been able to turn left and get to MetroCenter because a platform would have been an obstruction in the way. And that really made access challenging for all of these businesses and properties, many of which you can't even see on the view of this screen that continue down MetroCenter because there's not another great way to get there. So that was one challenge. Another was that, or we actually looked at an option to mitigate that challenge by pushing the platform to the north side of the roadway and make it what we call side running instead of center running. And what that ended up doing is cutting off access to all of these properties. So it kind of fixed one problem and created another. And the other challenge with that is it would have required transitioning from that center running alignment to the side running one on the north side across TxDOT's 71 bridge. And that prevented, that takes more space to make that transition and kind of curve the roadway from one spot to the other. And that would have prevented maintaining the existing lane or vehicular capacity across that bridge, which is not technically feasible or acceptable from a design standpoint. So long story short, it was determined to not be technically feasible to advance this site 1 option into the 30% design. So that brings us to where we are today with the proposed concept over at Coriander. And here we avoided those issues and are able to stay center running and not block or cut off access to the businesses and homes and properties on both sides here. It also has some great transit supportive land uses. You know, you'll see lots of homes and neighborhoods, and there's new development coming up all the time over in this area. And those will both support the ridership for the light rail and also benefit from access to the light rail.
You know, I just want to say as an aside, Lindsay, as you're moving in here, I'm starting to see a lively chat going on about naming in this area. So, you know, I want to thank you all for putting names into the chat. I've just like looking at this here, you know, naming it after Annie's Day and Night building, Anacita Limon Fernandez Rivera Station. I've also seen another one that was coming into the chat as well. I'd love it if you have an idea that you could share it with us. We'd definitely be willing to read them on screen if you did. And I know that there are some other questions in the chat. We will get to them after we talk about the park and ride location, and we'll circle back to some of those questions about bus lanes and bike lanes in this corridor. So let's continue, Lindsay.
All right, perfect timing. We'll talk about the park and ride. So we mentioned why we want a park and ride for the MetroCenter station, and that brings us to where can it go? So it's a challenging, it's tough to find location of undeveloped land anywhere along East Riverside. And what isn't developed today has a new site plan popping up tomorrow. And it's all very fluid and being developed as we speak. And so we looked at these 4 parcels that you see on the map here. And then I'll jump over in a moment to talk about a comparison between them. But we developed some criteria to evaluate these based on, and the first one being the priority of proximity to the station platform itself. So we want pedestrians to be able to get from that park and ride parking lot to the station as easily and safely as possible. And then also needed to think about the capacity of the site and how many parking spaces can we fit there. Thinking about planned land uses of the area and making sure that we're compatible with those and existing site uses and conditions, of course. So that brings us to this. I don't expect you to remember which one was parcel 1, 2, 3, and 4. I will try to remind you which ones those were, and I'll flip back and forth a little as I go through each of these. So parcel 1, I'm gonna go back, is this south corner of Riverside and 71. Then parcel 2 is next to the Motel 6 is here on the left. So it's the north
big,
corner.
That hotel city over there. Yeah.
71. 3 is right, just sort of contiguous or connected to parcel 1. And then 4 is at the west end of the station between Uphill and Yellow Jacket. So going back to that comparison, parcel 1, again, on the south side there, we looked at access and it was just too far from the station. You would have to walk a ways and wanted something to be closer. Is the main reason that one wasn't chosen. Parcel 2 was still up against 71, but on the north side, back to that, just to the right of or east of Motel 6. That one also had access challenges and is a long walk, and not only a long walk, but a lot of crossings that a pedestrian would have to go across. I think it's 3 different roadway crossings. You have to get across Airport Commerce and then Coriander and then into the median of the station. And that introduces delay as you're waiting for a safe time to cross each of those areas. And then parcel 3 was that one next to parcel 1, and noted there that the land use was not as conducive for a park and ride here. It's a planned redevelopment and is planned for, I think it's residential and multiple uses that will be very transit supportive to the station, but not the best for the park and ride itself. So that left parcel 4. So going back, that's this one here. That is between
getting a bunch of questions in the chat that seem to be related, and I also see a hand up, so we'll probably take that. Before we get there, the questions are really about the specific design of the park and ride. And I know we keep talking about the park and ride as a place you park and you ride, but does it have to be a surface parking lot? Like why is this being built in there, and could it be something more?
Yeah, great questions. So this site that has been identified as the concept for the 30% design includes roughly 150 parking spaces. And we'll note that there may be future demand that exceeds that. So future development for maybe a garage and a later phase might need to be considered. But at this time, for the initial opening operations, is planned to be a surface parking lot. But
right now we're more concerned about the footprint than the specific use in the future.
Yes, and also the park and ride would have additional amenities, ticket vending and public restrooms, information offices, metro bikes, scooters, food trucks. So you can't pass up an opportunity for good tacos in town. And those sorts of amenities will be further designed as the design progresses into later stages.
So Lindsay, I see Lauren Stanley has her hand up. Can I go ahead and take that caller? Lauren, you're on the air. Just hit unmute and you'll be with us. Lauren, can you unmute? If not, we'll come back to you. All right, it looks like it's not going to happen yet. So, oh, there it comes. There it goes. Lauren, you're on the air.
Lonnie.
Yes.
Hi. I cut out for a minute there. I've been doing, I've been running around my son, and I don't know why you wanted me to unmute.
I'm so glad to hear that you're able to participate in a public meeting like this and be with your kids tonight. So that's part of the reason why we love being on Zoom. But go ahead with your question.
Oh, say it again.
Go ahead with your question.
Oh, I don't have one. I'm sorry.
All right. Well, you raised your hand, so that's why I called on you. But I'll go
I'm
ahead.
so sorry. So sorry. Hazard of, yeah, doing too many things at once. Sorry about that.
It's all right. Thanks for being here tonight. Go ahead, Lindsay.
Are there any other questions while we pause here?
No, they're coming in through the Q&A, and I'll look through them and try to summarize some of them to be on air, but no other hands are raised at the moment.
Okay, so our next step was that we were going to move west of here.
Oh.
Do we want to?
Well, I do have some questions about this parking lot. Then Katie Carmichael says, can you expand on the safety and security aspects of the parking lot?
Safety and security, sure. So as design progresses, we go through various safety and security analyses, including something we call CPTED, or crime prevention through environmental design. That's a mouthful of an acronym, but safety and security are absolutely criteria in the design process. And through that process, we look at things like lighting and clear sight lines, and having a public safety office is actually planned here. So as having attendants that are with Capital Metro that staff this area and really support the public safety of the facility. So those details will continue to be advanced, but are absolutely at forefront of mind to make sure that people feel safe and secure in using this facility.
And then I've got another question here from Marty Combs. It's not specific to the park and ride, it's specific to the platform. And Marty's wondering, how many train cars can the platforms accommodate when the line starts running? Any idea?
Sure. Yes, so we don't know the exact vehicle yet. ATP, or Austin Transit Partnership, will go through a selection process coming up here in the future to evaluate different options for a specific light rail vehicle. But I'll speak in general terms. An individual train might be in the order of magnitude of 100 feet to 130 feet long. So 3 of those, and we call it a consist when you kind of piece those trains together. So a 3 train consist could fit at these 400-foot long platforms. That might not necessarily be needed on day 1 of operation, but want to accommodate really the future long-term needs of the program and be able to meet that future demand, which is likely to be needed. And the growth of this area, we really want to plan for that future condition.
Okay, well, let's see. I have some other comments here. One was appreciating the full level boarding. I know I've gone to other cities where you have to walk up some stairs to get on the train, and that is not the case here. I do see that Lisa Lakey has some questions about land near Faro, and we're going to head there in just a moment. So we'll put a pin in it for a minute. And then a positive comment about taking the Bergstrom Spur into account, which is great. Thanks for that comment, Anna.
Oh, and I can speak to that a little bit.
Oh, please do.
The Bergstrom Spur, not part of the Blue Line, but is planned to connect to the Blue Line corridor. It runs kind of sort of parallel to the line to the south, and then would turn up to the north in that area between 71 and 183 that we talked about earlier, kind of in the MetroCenter Hoke area, and connect to the proposed shared use path along the Blue Line. So it
I have to say,
Bergstrom Spur connects.
Yeah, because the Bergstrom Spur then would actually wind up connecting all the way out to 130 because of the roadway connection that's already in place. That's exciting. Let's see, Andrew Lynch had a question that's interesting about how are left turns stopped. Is there going to be some physical barrier in the way because they've been having trouble with this in Houston?
So the transitway itself is a 28-foot wide concrete slab area where the two tracks are embedded, and it has a curb on either side. So you and it's not like a nice soft
like Michigan where
curve.
You can just jump a curb.
It's a hard curb. So that will certainly discourage crossing the transitway where you shouldn't and where we can't safely protect that movement.
There were also some questions about the bike and pedestrian facilities. So just to clarify again, there's separated bike lane from pedestrian lane, even though they, you showed one section where they were fully separated with a green strip, and you showed another where they were kind of side by side, and that's the shared use path, but they would be marked and striped, right?
Those design details still need to be refined further in the next stage. What I'll say is where they're separate, they each have their own facility, and they're actually, usually have street trees in between them or a curb or a kind of buffer zone. Where they're combined into the shared use path, it's a wider facility. So in most of the corridor, it's at least 10 feet for that shared use path that provides enough space for those dual movements to occur. We
had a question about the bus lane. Where will the bus lane be?
So the buses will stop in the outermost travel lane. And if you're familiar with a little further west of here, but there's actually dedicated bus lanes along East Riverside between about Grove and basically to I-35. Those would be replaced by this project because we need to make room for the transitway there in the middle. So the buses would then use the outer travel lane, outer vehicular traffic lane, and stop in that lane.
So yeah, just to clarify, those transit lanes are a stopgap interim measure between now and the delivery of the blue line. And so they will go away as the light rail line is running through the center. Well, so I think, Lindsay, it'd be safe for us to continue down the street because some of these questions will also be relevant as we move to Montopolis and Faro. So it'd be exciting to get to show some of that. Not as much has changed as the MetroCenter location, but still it's helpful to see where, again, where we are at the moment. Again, this is written in clay at the moment. And so we're really hoping that you can give us feedback that will help us solidify this plan when we reach the 30% design rollout this summer.
Absolutely. Thanks, Lonnie. So Josh, if you can pan to the west there, we'll leave the MetroCenter station.
All right, headed towards Montopolis.
You'll see some of these shapes outside of the right-of-way there again. And that's again for water quality ponds. This one to the left there is actually a drainage area. So you have a culvert and a head wall where you outfall from that culvert, and so you have a drainage easement surrounding that.
Like there's still a left-hand turn lane into Maxwell, heading westbound.
We have left turn lanes in both directions here, so you can
that'll help for the school that's in that area.
So if you're going eastbound, you can turn left to Frontier Valley. If you're going westbound, you can turn left to Maxwell. Then you continue going west. If you're wondering what these green triangles are in the middle,
what is that?
There, those are what we call crossovers, and that is a special kind of track that connects from one track to the other. So it allows for operating flexibility for the train to move to the other track.
Cool. I'm glad there's enough room there for that. So I see this hatched line. What is this hatched blue line there in the middle? That's not a platform, right?
No, it's a striped out area of the roadway, which generally occurs because we're dropping from a left turn lane to where we go back to not having a left turn lane. So it becomes, so you can see that left turn lane just to your right. And so you have that kind of area in between where that lane has dropped.
Okay.
And you might be wondering, why wouldn't you have a left turn lane here? And why not have them everywhere throughout the corridor? So in this particular location, we have an intersection located nearby that we just talked about, Frontier and Maxwell. And here, to add additional left turn lanes, it increases the right-of-way footprint and increases the property impacts on both sides. So we tried to be thoughtful about where we put those left turns. And there are some locations where we don't have them because of the impact of fitting them in there.
So let's take a look. Let's go further up the street towards Vargas and Montopolis, because I'm sure people are going to want to. Okay, good. There's a signalized intersection there at Vargas. I've been wondering because of I know Idea Montopolis is there on Vargas, so that's a big destination for people in cars, for sure.
Yes, and you also might notice all these green circles everywhere. These are some of those developments popping up everywhere we turn along this area, including directly across Vargas, where that's actually, you can sort of see those dashed orange lines, but it's actually going to punch through under the proposed development there. So yes, we have.
Learned something new tonight, folks.
We have a left turn here, and you can keep going. You're starting to see the east end of our Montopolis station. So on the right side there, you see that ramp. That's to connect from the nearest cross street into the median there and walk into the center platform where you can board the train going in either direction. And you have the same on the left or the west side of the station there at the actual Montopolis intersection.
So to be clear, that orange that I'm seeing to the left and to the right of that hatched platform, that's like a special concrete walkway to be able to get to the platform, correct?
Yes, that's
terrific. Right. And I do see that there's a question in the audience from Chris Gregassi. I'm going to try to allow you to talk, but you may have to unmute if you want to be on the air. Chris, are you there?
Yes. Can you hear me?
I can. Go ahead.
That parcel between Uphill and Yellow Jacket, correct? That's parcel 4, correct?
Let's go back to that parcel there just for a sec. So let's see. It was Lawrence, then Frontier, then Anise. There's Yellow Jacket and Uphill. So between Yellow Jacket and Uphill?
Correct. Now, aren't there homes in there? That's not vacant. Aren't there people living in there in their homes?
There is a residence, and there's a food truck and a salon. So there are displacements associated with that park and ride site.
And how do you displace those people?
You help relocate them. So they have to be fairly compensated and go through a very specific process to provide not only you have to acquire the land in fair market value and also provide relocation assistance.
So that whole parcel is not one owner. It's not owned by one person.
That's correct.
Owners, correct?
Yes.
Okay. That was not clear. Now it's clear. Thank you.
Thanks again for bringing that up, Chris. And I think he brings up a pretty good point there. Again, there is a right-of-way acquisition team. They will be working to assess the value of the property and make offers to property owners. In addition to that, they will help provide funding for search and for relocation assistance. So there should be no expense incurred for that move as well. But to your point, there are a few people who are property owners in this location, so we'll be working with all three to determine if this site will work. Thanks for bringing that up, Chris. And then let's slide back to where we were, because we were up at Montopolis, and I swear I want to get to Faro. I know I heard a question about some of the land near Faro, and I'd love to get there. So we're back at Montopolis. We're at the platform. Take it away, Lindsay.
Okay, Josh, keep going to your west. Again, we're street level, center running. You see go back a little to your right.
Yeah, we're not that far.
Pedestrian crossing here.
Okay.
So that's another pedestrian hybrid beacon.
Exciting to serve that new building that's there to get to the other side. Great.
Going. You see those crossovers again, and here we actually even have a storage track in the middle there that allows for a staging area for trains for whatever reason that may be needed to sort of pull a train off the main track temporarily before you bring it back on without having to block operations of the main track.
Now, I think this area that's to the south here, that it looks like there's partly a water retention there, right?
Yeah, so scroll just a little to the west so we can show where we're at here. So we're at Grove, and that box off to the south or at the bottom of the screen there is another potential systems footprint. So we might have a traction power substation there. I will note that that's very in progress, and we're also looking at some other options for where that might need to be. So that's a very preliminary location, but a possible location.
Owned lot, isn't it? Isn't that something that the city's working to develop in that area?
Yes, for affordable housing, which will be a great, wonderful development so near the stations through here. And it's almost equidistant between the Mentopolis station and the Faro station. So you have a short, less than a quarter mile walking distance either way you go, split from this property.
And it looks like this intersection, we're still maintaining the through lanes and left-hand turn lanes.
Yes.
It looks like it's down to one lane.
Two through lanes. So all through here, we have 2 through lanes, and then you also will see at these signalized intersections an additional dedicated left turn.
I see. Great. Okay.
And I should say 2 through lanes in each direction. Not.
Yeah, they've already
going west from Grove. We're coming up to the Faro station. This one's a little different in that the topography or the ground conditions through here are a little less compatible with light rail. It's a little bit of a roller coaster. It does a little bit of an up and down kind of dip, and the trains can't do that. So in this area, in order to make that work, what we have, you see those red notched lines again in the middle, and Josh, maybe zoom in a little bit so we can see those. Those are retaining walls alongside the transit way. So the trains or the transit way are actually elevated a bit above the roadway that stays at existing ground level below it in order to basically flatten the grades to make them work for light rail design criteria through here. But then we're back flush with the intersection so that you can still cross the transit way where you have the intersections.
So I know that Lisa Lakey was asking some questions here. Can you, looking at the north side of the street between Faro and Pennock, can you show us where the existing right-of-way line is and like what's going to be past it? 'Cause I think my understanding is the neighborhood that's just north, that this strip is like part of their neighborhood. And so they've had a lot of questions about this and what's planned in that area.
Yes, Josh, can you zoom like way in so we can see? There we go. All right, see that orangish dashed line? That's existing right of way. Then the blue dashed line is proposed. So you see here we have the 2 separate bike and pedestrian or sidewalk facilities here. That's that shaded area in orange, and the green street trees in between them. And that's what pushes that right of way out here to provide that connectivity for the bike and pedestrian elements along the corridor. And that does move beyond the existing right of way that you can see here. In case you're wondering what the yellow lines are, those are not right of way. It's a footprint for potential access during construction. It's temporary only, but just noting that you sometimes need a little bit of access outside of the footprint that you're actually building temporarily only, but is not for the right of way and not any kind of permanent impact.
Are we able to zoom out a little further just to see how close the houses are to that? There we go.
Yes,
So
and then-
yeah, so it's not impacting the right of way. It looks like there's the right of way lines for each of those lots. You're not going into any of those home lots.
We are outside of the individual residential properties, but it is common property to the neighborhood. That is where that proposed right-of-way line is. And if you're wondering what that blue box is there, that's another potential preliminary location for some of those systems elements that I mentioned. And in this case, what is called a communications and train control bungalow, which is sort of a box that houses the required equipment that has to be at every station location. That is how the trains communicate with the signals and how they are controlled. The operations are controlled along the line.
So kind of like those control boxes at every street light that you see downtown with the little pergolas over them.
Similar. And in the case of the transit systems, although not at this design stage, there are some really neat opportunities to screen those to make them a little more aesthetically pleasing than, say, some of those traffic signal boxes that you're used to seeing. And those can be incorporated into art programs and have, it's a great place for input from the community in terms of how do those get put into the surrounding community fabric without being such a visual obstruction.
And it looks like even with everything going on here, we're still maintaining those bus stops in the area, so that making a transfer pretty easy still.
And we do have those bus stops at every station, but they're also in between. So the spacing of bus stops is not the same as the spacing of light rail, and it's not meant to be. It actually helps bridge the gap and provide a little bit of a shorter spacing in between the light rail stations.
Lindsay, I'm wondering, can you speak at all about the noise of an electric light rail line versus cars and buses operating in this corridor today?
Yes, so we are analyzing the noise impacts associated with the Blue Line as part of the what is called the environmental impact statement for the project. And those results will be published, which Jocelyn talked about that timeline earlier, but this summer. And we'll have the public will have the opportunity to review and comment on those impacts. But I will say generally, the noise impact through most of the corridor is deemed to not be, it's not a severe impact. It is a very small noise impact and is actually quieter than the traffic operations along the corridor. You do have some noise, mostly associated with the bells on the trains that ring or ding, whatever word you want to use, when they come into and out of the stations. But the trains themselves as they operate are very quiet.
I will say, I know that there are a few members in the chat who very likely live in this area. It would help if there is a neighborhood association or a group where you regularly meet. If you can put the contact information there in the Q&A, that would be great. I can even open chat so that way just hosts and panelists can see your chat if you feel like I'm putting the contact information there. We do go and speak to neighborhood associations by request, and sometimes if we don't get a good showing at one of these public meetings, we'll go proactively. But usually when we do that follow-up, it'll be at stop outreach, or so you may see us with some iPads and wearing gear further up this corridor at a bus stop in the future to gather feedback. But again, it looks like Melissa and Lisa, you may be part of that neighborhood association. Let us know how to get in touch with you, and that way we'll make sure to bring this show to your organization rather than make them come to us. And I think this is really the end of the show for tonight, right? Like we made it to Faro. You didn't think it was possible. Great. Well, let's see. Are there any folks who are out there? We've got a few minutes before we fully wrap up the show tonight. If you've been sitting and watching and you want to ask some questions, now might be a good time to raise your hand. We'd certainly allow you to say hello and let us know what you're thinking, or if you've got some advice about something you like, something you don't like, something maybe we should take into consideration. I see Melissa and Lisa are there. So Melissa, I'm gonna unmute you and you should be able to speak now. Say hello.
Hi, can you hear me?
I can, Melissa, you're on the air. Terrific.
Woo! I sent you in the chat a couple of the communities, and I can email you our HOAs.
That would be great.
So I had put in the question box right now where you are currently proposing the new right-of-way right there, the extended right-of-way, there's a very large berm. Okay.
Yes.
Do you have any idea of approximately how many feet that is?
Do you mean like horizontally, how far into the
Oh,
property?
I'm so sorry. I'm so sorry. From the existing right-of-way moving to the north, how many approximate feet are you proposing to extend that right-of-way?
You have, if I don't have that handy, I'll get back to you later, but Josh, can you give me a rough?
Meaning like from the orange dotted line to the blue dotted line.
Yeah, we'll give you, not that
Not
one. Go
that
for
one.
the-
I'll talk about the box next.
Oh, just that, yeah, so not the box, just that blue line there.
Yeah, to existing right of way.
And
it
that's
looks like
mostly
about 26 feet.
26 feet.
But to the south, not from that
And that's to
point the
accommodate that
orange.
bike and pedestrian
Yeah,
infrastructure.
so that's approximately 26 feet.
Mhm.
Correct. 26
Okay.
feet.
So then what my question is that's an amazing berm, and I know you guys know it, and it's a beautiful buffer. Is there any way that there's any sort of consideration for that the box, we'll call it, can move to the east? Where I see that there is the yellow dotted line, which is a rectangle which is perpendicular to Faro Drive. I don't know what that is, but if there's any way that box can move actually to the east.
Potentially, yeah, I think that's
Because yeah, because then you aren't, I mean, my gosh, I don't even know what that looks like. And I definitely believe in my backyard, of course, but moving that to the east would be an amazing experience on a pedestrian and a bicycle, to have that berm there as a buffer versus, yeah, to the east, it would be fantastic. So that was my quick thing, and I'll follow up with you guys with the HOAs to reach out to a couple of communities around here.
Terrific, Melissa. Thanks for that. And again, you know, we of course talk to the East Riverside Altwarp combined, but knowing sometimes the specific neighborhoods, like, you know, if Chambord has a meeting, we want to know about it. We really do want to go and be available where you are. So thanks again for giving that feedback. That's helpful because you've got members of the design team here tonight. Also, I see Lisa Lakey. I've got your hand raised. If you unmute, you should be able to get on the air. Looking good. Say hello, Lisa. Oh, no. All right. Well, Lisa, I can't hear you from some reason. You know, I bet you if you have a headphone plugged in or something, if you unplugged it, that might actually work.
Hello, I think now, can you hear me?
Yes, I can. Terrific.
We can't hear you. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, good. Well, I wanted to second what the previous speaker said about that berm there. It has nice swales, and there's been an emphasis by the Crossing Place Neighborhood Association, which is contiguous to this, to even grow natural grass on the area and so forth. I know that at well, so that's one issue. The second issue is regarding noise. You mentioned the quietness of the bus, but now we're going to of the transit of the train. But the train is now going to be there, and the traffic is not going to be any less, I don't think, if we're doubling our population. And so can you get an overall noise impact? The third point is with regard to bells ringing for the properties that are contiguous to this. Bells ringing when they come in. You know, what are the hours of the transit? And does this mean that, you know, at midnight and 12:15 and 12:30 they're going to hear bells ringing when people are trying to be sleeping and so forth? So the noise impact is not just the individual train, but all the other factors that are still there. And then the encroachment here, again, I second the previous speaker with regard to trying to save that berm at all costs.
Well, thank you for your comments. Let's see, we had a few things. One was tipping us up about the crossing place neighborhoods, so thanks for that. And then there was really the question, Lindsay, about like what goes into the noise impact analysis, and will there be bells ringing at 2 or 3 in the morning?
So I'll tackle the first part of that, and then I'm gonna ask Sarah, who is our planning lead, to help on the from the service perspective of what the operating hours are envisioned here. But the noise analysis for the blue line, the way that works is you have something called a build condition and something called a no build condition. And the build is what the corridor is with the blue line as proposed. And the no build is the corridor in future year. So with all of that growth that we know is happening, but without the blue line. And so the noise analysis is specifically isolated to the additional noise associated with the blue line, not for just regional growth and traffic volumes increasing in the area. That would not be part of kind of the mitigation associated with the blue line itself, because it's not caused by the blue line. Then Sarah, I don't know if you can, are you able to unmute?
Yeah, I see her there. Sarah Higgy?
Yes, I'm here.
How are
Sorry.
you, Sarah?
Sorry.
Operating plan for the blue line in terms of hours of operation.
Sure. So the service is going to run approximately almost nearly 24 hours a day. There will be some overnight hours during which service is shut down in order for the system to be serviced and maintained. So that is going to be roughly between the hours of 4 and 5 a.m. It will be shut down, but the frequency drops down. The planned frequency drops to about 15 minutes at night. In the overnight hours, it's 10 minutes during the peak. On the weekends, the service is a little bit shorter. It doesn't run quite as long.
And that will all be documented in that draft environmental impact statement that I mentioned, and that will have the opportunity for public or community review and comment this summer.
Yeah, and I should actually correct myself. On the weekends, it's not that the service doesn't run as long, it just runs less frequently.
Thanks for that. Well, let's see, we're getting close to the end of the hour. I'm not sure how much, do we have a few more slides for closing out the session tonight, or this is where?
Yep, that's it, other than thank you.
So then let me go ahead and allow, Andrew Pyle has been patiently waiting with his hand up. If you unmute Andrew, you should be able to speak.
Yeah. Y'all kind of did answer my question in the previous one. I was curious about the hours, but I'm wondering, like, I know that Montopolis is, not Montopolis, excuse me, Riverside, like close to the HEB, is going to have possibly have an underpass. Is there ever any consideration about an underpass near MetroCenter?
No, a grade separation was not analyzed here, and it does introduce additional challenges. So everywhere that you have a grade separation, you have to go either down and back up or up and back down, and that certainly impacts the footprint and widens the footprint of the project. I think where you're probably talking about is at Pleasant Valley. And there's a big wide median in that location. And one of the reasons that it was or is considered as a design option there. It also, so the trains can't go up and down very quickly, both from the standpoint of the vehicles themselves and the design criteria, but also from a user just ride comfort, quality of ride standpoint of going up and down a lot is pretty uncomfortable. So we tried to minimize those sorts of large changes in vertical grade and profile as much as we could.
And then Lindsay, I wanted, since we're right here towards the top of the hour, I wanted to answer Daniel Tristan's question about when are we going to talk about the rest of the rail? Well, you know what? We host meetings all of the time. And we would love to talk about more of the plan with you. Just so you know, we do have an additional discussion about the Lady Bird Lake Bridge happening in late April. We're also planning to revisit Pleasant Valley and East Riverside again in mid-May. And we'll have a ton of additional Orange Line meetings in addition to covering things like the rail maintenance facility, which we didn't really cover today, but may be near the airport. Some discussions about tunnels and vehicles and systems in more detail. So there's a lot more coming. And in fact, the best place to stay informed is on the Project Connect website. You'll notice when you go there, the Get Involved button is sticking out in a very obvious way because we want you to click on it. And if you do, you'll see the upcoming meetings that you can register for. You can even go to the Public Engagement Library and see every single meeting we've hosted since the election and even before that. And if you click on any one of the meetings, for example, you can see the presentation and the video. So this will eventually be on this very page that we're talking about today. But again, on the Get Involved page, if you keep sliding down, you can join a working group. You can see what the Community Advisory Committee is doing. You can also see other meetings that are on our radar. And again, we end it with the Project Connect Engagement Library. If you don't sign up for a meeting, since you already have, you'll probably get this, you can always contact us to request a meeting or to subscribe to our newsletter. So I'd encourage you to pay a visit there. And certainly if you have requests for meeting information or for more details on other parts of the line, you can always reach us at feedback@capmetro.org. Well, you know what? We're at the top of the hour, and Jocelyn said that she has parent bedtime duties to attend to. So I know that's all we've got for tonight, folks. But again, I want to say thank you very much for being here. I hope you will tell a friend about our future events, and I hope to see you out there. Have a good night, everybody.
Thanks, y'all.